Hi, everyone. Forris Jr. here with Rolling Tape. Today we have author Michael Laskin, his book, The Authentic Actor, The Art and Business of Being Yourself. Now, let's roll tape.
This episode brought to you by Spoof Dance Film Festival. Make parody commercials and bring the funny.
Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Forris.
Nice to have you on the show. Great book. Tell us a bit about it.
Sure. I think the genesis of the book, the beginning notion of the book is that acting as it is practiced in the modern times is a little bit different than it was back in the olden times. And the notion of the art and business of being yourself, this relates directly to film acting. I do a lot of work with theater and with film and television as well. But I think it's like the notion is when you meet somebody for the first time, if you meet a person who comes to your door has an appointment with you or something, you have an immediate notion about that person. You have an immediate response. And this is actually a line I use in the book. It's not show business, it's human business. And it's the same thing when you meet an actor in a movie. When somebody walks through the door, you haven't seen that actor before. It's a human response. And so when you train actors, you can train them about the doing. Acting is doing. But the other thing is acting is also just being. So if you combine the doing and the being, you've got the authentic actor, in my estimation. And you can teach people the doing. It's very hard to teach the being. The being is basically leading an examined life and becoming more of who you already are, because film and television acting is generally about being a more truthful, dynamic version of who you already are.
Like Clint Eastwood would be an authentic actor.
He's an actor who plays to his own identity. You know, there are actors who are transformational, like Daniel Day-Lewis is very transformational. He's different from role to role, but you find actors who also play very strongly to their own identity. Seth Rogen, Clint Eastwood, people like that. And that's just a different kind of acting. It doesn't mean it's lesser or it's just different. And in Lincoln, which most everybody saw, you have Daniel Day-Lewis being a transformative actor. You have Tommy Lee Jones playing Thaddeus Stevens as a Tommy Lee Jones part. You know, he plays it pretty much the way he would play it. It's brilliant. That film is a perfect example of two kinds of acting. One's not better than the other, but I think you're generally hired to be a version of who you already are to some extent. And a lot of actors are trained, theater trained in particular, to become somebody else. And that's in many cases not required.
Method acting was a big thing back in the day. This is totally different than that.
Yeah, it is. I think method acting, there was a whole school of thinking that not only Lee Strasberg and the Method, but the Sanford Meisner and Stella Adler, and they're all up on the Mount Rushmore of acting teachers. But those are all 80-year-old ideas, kind of. And they were all ideas that came to the forefront because it was a reaction to sort of an artificial and non-emotionally connected acting that was of that period. We're way beyond that. I work with young actors. You know, being emotionally real is already preloaded on, that's like software preloaded on their computers. They don't have to be taught to be that way. They have to be taught, frankly, to be imaginative, because a lot of them are just confusing actual real behavior with acting, which is different. I mean, acting is real behavior with a purpose and with a strategy, you know. But I think those ideas were seminal ideas. I think they're increasingly irrelevant, but they're still being taught as if they're new. And that's one of the reasons I started to teach and wrote this book, because I thought there's got to be a different way forward.
Right, and you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said of that era, because the era has changed, and an era in film and in television isn't that long. It can be 5 years.
Yeah.
With all the TV shows and the movies. Could you talk a little bit about that, how acting has changed because of the internet and because of more TV channels?
I think people's attention spans are shorter. I'm not saying none of this is necessarily good, by the way. It just is. I think delivery systems have changed. People are watching things on their phones and on small devices. So it's changed dramatically. And to take nothing away from the older methodologies, there is something about that, and I talk about this a lot. I talk about it in my book, and I talk about it when I teach. There's no substitution for knowing what you're doing. I mean, those are hard-won skills. There's no shortcut. You just have to put in the time and the work to become good at it. But then above and beyond that, there's something else, and it has to do with personal identity, in film and television in particular. And you see someone, you go, oh, I like that guy, or I like her, or I think I know someone like her. There's something that resonates with you just the way when you meet people. So the actor's job, I mean, the irony is most of the work is for 19-year-olds in the film and television business, a lot of it. And 19-year-olds, by definition, can't know who they are. They have no clue who they are. I certainly didn't have a clue when I was that age. So for the young artist who's actually really curious about that, you have to jumpstart the process a little bit. And you can't really teach it. You have to just point them in a direction and say, this is where you need to go if you want this, if you want to be great. If you want to just be good and you want to be part of the mix, that's not my class. That's not what I do. Mm-hmm. So it's more like, do you want to be great? How good do you want to be? Who do you admire? Who do you think is doing phenomenal work that you admire? And so it's that approach is what works for me.
What kind of advice would you give to, say, an indie filmmaker who's trying to direct some actors who aren't that experienced?
Well, in general, I would say that, I can't speak to any, in Los Angeles, I'm exposed to a lot of talent. There is no shortage of talent. I mean, there is an enormous amount of talent. It's staggering how much talent there is, real talent. So there's kind of no excuse for an indie filmmaker to work with people who aren't experienced or who aren't good, But that, to honor that question, if they're not experienced, they may be experienced, let's say, in theater, but they haven't done a lot of films. That's a different technique entirely. Yes, and the reality is an indie filmmaker is working on a small budget and doesn't have time to hold people's hands. Most directors I've worked with just, I don't know how many directors in my career, many, many, many. I can count on one hand how many of them were great, to be honest. They don't have time. That's why I say to actors, you have to learn to self-direct, because they don't have time to talk about your motivation and direct you. They've got 8 pages to do that day, and they have 32 setups and whatever, it's crazy. So you have to come in with something that you've worked on that fits the world that director has created for you. And you work kind of in a vacuum. You don't work in collaboration with other actors rehearsing like you do in a play. So that's a big adjustment for people who've only done theater work, let's say.
Right. And there's, as we know, we've talked, everybody talks about the difference between theater acting and movie acting. They're so different, TV being up close and movies being up close.
Yeah, I think theater acting is about what you can do, and movie and TV acting is about who you are. These are big generalizations, but what you can do only goes so far. When you're in the professional level, everybody who's competing for something is talented. So it's not about the most talented person gets the part. It's about the person who, for some reason, resonates in a room with people on film. There are people who resonate on film who are dull as paste in person, too, by the way. Film is a funny thing that way. It's a little metaphysical. But theater acting is, I just did a play, and I hadn't done a play for a long time, and it's a one-person play. Scared the life out of me, 90 minutes of me talking. But the great thing about that is it gets to your core skills, and it gets to, it's almost like an athletic competition. It's in my case, that particular thing was so difficult and challenging. And most actors in TV and film work in a 3-page format. They're working in a small little, we're doing 2 pages. We're doing 8 pages today. You're in a page and a half, and that's all you do. And so you have to think about it and approach it differently. And you have to, no one can teach you how to do your close-up at 3 a.m. when you've been on the set for 16 hours and you can't remember your name. So it's a different kind of a test. And I think what's cool about it, though, if it's really like, I had some students of mine, I'm doing a little teaching at UCLA right now, and they were able to go down on the set of this television show called The Last Ship, which is this big Michael Bay network show with, enormous sets. It's a Michael Bay thing. So, and they had never been on a set like that. I said, well, when you get on a set, when you're on like a freaking, aircraft carrier set, the acting is easy because the world is so real around you. You don't have to create the world. It's just there. You just have to be in the world. But the actor has to understand the world they're in. And some do and some don't. Like the great Michael Caine is great in a film like Harry Brown, and he's also great in Miss Congeniality too. He understands the world he's in. And that's a big, for film and television, that's a whole separate thing.
Okay. Excellent. Where can we get the book? Where can people get a hold of you?
You can get the book at mwp.com, Michael Wiese Productions, which is my publisher. You can get it directly from them. You can also get them through Barnes & Noble and Amazon, obviously. Who carry every book in the known universe. You can get a hold of me at michael@michaellaskinstudio.com. That's my email, and I wait to hear from the millions of people now who are going to see this podcast.
Hey, you never know.
I never know.
Just takes one.
That's right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Michael. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Forris. I appreciate it too.
That was Michael Laskin, author of The Authentic Actor, The Art and Business of Being Yourself. Thanks for watching Rolling Tape. Please subscribe to our channel for filmmakers so you'll know when new videos come out. You can like and comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching Rolling Tape.